Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effin' Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors that goes behind the scenes with some of the most interesting characters in the Australian franchise industry. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, my co-host, John Sully, and today we're speaking to Nurse Next Door co-founders, Matt and Amber.
Righto, team. Tell us your fucking story.
Okay, so it's not... We're trying to change it. It's franchising story, of course.
We did have to say that as we left the office. They said, "Oh, where are you going?" We said, "We're going to do a podcast. Tell us your effing story." And one of the girls goes, "Oh, no, but what's it called?" I said, "No, that's what it's called." So, it's franchising.
We're gonna let. But before we get into the franchising side of things, we're going to right back. So, where did you both grow up? We'll start with you, Amber. Where did you grow up, and what did you like to do as a kid?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I grew up in a place called Dingley Village.
My parents owned Dingley Tuckerbag. So
No
I worked
way.
in Dingley Tuckerbag. Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Maybe we might
Did
know
you work
each
at
other.
Dingley? Did you work at Dingley Tuckerbag?
I didn't, but I certainly went there and bought stuff. So who
Yeah.
knows?
You
Maybe.
pinch
Yeah.
anything? Or did a packet of snakes
No,
or
no,
anything
no,
like
I
that?
was a good girl. I was a good girl. As a kid, so yeah, I love sport. I did a lot of sport as a young person. So yeah, played a lot of netball.
What's netball?
Netball was my sport.
Yeah.
So
Australian level netball.
Yeah. Sorry.
She won't say it. Australian level
Oh,
junior
just a little
netballer.
bit of netball,
Yeah, just
yeah.
a little
Did
bit
you
of
really?
netball. Yeah.
a little bit
Wow.
of netball at the start, and then
Yeah.
a lot.
A lot of
as I
netball
sort
later.
of
Yeah.
Found that I was quite good at it.
So
So-
did you go?
No,
Sorry, did you travel doing that or what?
Oh, only around Australia. So
Right.
did Australian championships and things like that.
Wow,
Yeah.
good on you. Do you
Would you
still
have played
play?
footy now?
Oh,
Oh, no.
I did used to play as an older adult, but yeah, I tore both my calf muscles, and I thought it's time to
Got a
hang up.
DVT and
Yeah.
had to put off one of our overseas trips, so we said that's the end of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I know what I'd do.
Well,
So very active.
sport was a
Yeah, sport
primary
was,
focus.
sport
and
was my thing,
Yeah.
and we'll get into it later. But
Yeah.
later on, I've been involved in design, and I always look back as it's sort of, you're going to school and working out what you want to do at university, and it's funny how design just never came up. As when I was at school, I didn't.
So what
do
did you want to
design.
be? Yeah.
Well,
when you were
I-
10 or 12, like when
I
you were.
didn't really know what I wanted to be. I just knew that I loved sport, so I
Yeah.
thought, maybe something in sport. But it's interesting. What I always knew that I wanted to do was I wanted to be in business.
All
So
right.
I don't know where that
Really?
came from. It's just always.
Your family, like what
Look,
they do?
Dad was sort of dabbled in lots of different things. So I guess we would describe him as quite entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just liked the idea of the freedom that a business gives you, that you can go into any field and create whatever kind of future that you want, as opposed to staying on one sort of path.
Mm.
So what sort of, like in your teenage years, what did you have part-time jobs at all then? Not in Tuckerbag, but did you do
not
anything?
in Tuckerbag.
Delivering papers? No?
We actually both worked as swimming instructors.
Oh, okay.
At the, what was that called?
Oh, I don't know.
Is it-
Whatever
it was
that-
a gym.
Is
in
that
Dingley.
high school
The
days
Dim-
or-
yeah.
That was university.
Yeah.
So, while I was actually at school, I didn't have a job, and that was because I was so heavily involved
playing
in
netball.
sport.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time for a job.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Matt, where did you grow up? Before we'll get to uni in a minute, but
Yeah, East Bentley. So I was born in Tassie and moved to Melbourne when I was 5 with our family. And so grew up in East Bentley, so not that far really, southeast suburbs, a bit like Amber. Similar, loved sport, when I was a kid as well too. So not quite at the same level, but,
Didn't play netball for
no, I didn't play any netball for Australia. But, all sports, hockey. The school that I was at played a lot of the kids played hockey, field
Alright.
hockey. So we got into field hockey,
Yep.
cricket, tennis, basketball, that sort of thing. And then in high school, really got heavily into outdoor activities, outdoor education. So a lot of hiking, rock climbing, bushwalking, that sort of stuff. Whitewater canoeing and that sort of thing as well too. So so I've always been a bit like Amber, lots of sport. Now it's more so we probably focus on skiing more now. Did a bit of surfing, but I haven't surfed for years and years now. So, but lots of sport basically.
So were your parents, were they sporty as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think we would probably say both of our sets of
Yeah,
parents were very sporty. Amber's mum actually was one of the lead sort of swimming instructors at the gym where we worked as swimming instructors.
Yep.
They all played not together, but they all played tennis, things like that. My dad was he was a very good golfer as a younger guy. He was a pennant golfer in Sydney, so where he grew up, sort of thing. And my mum played field hockey as well too, so I guess she was quite happy when I started playing hockey. So yeah, so I guess we do come from a pretty sporty sort of family, and our kids are all sporty as well too. So yeah.
Were you fast on the hockey field, or were you a bit of a thug?
No, probably faster more than a thug.
You didn't grow until you were like 21.
No,
Really?
I was. Yeah, I think I grew about 4 or 5 inches after I left school. I remember going back to the first sort of school reunions, and people went,
Oh,
what happened to
shit.
you?
Yeah.
So I mean, I wasn't short. I was probably 5'11" or something like that, but I grew. Now I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
So I grew 4 inches after school, which was unusual for
Unusual,
people.
yeah.
So and I was about 70 kilos wringing wet, sort of thing. So fast rather than I was built for speed, not destruction. That's for sure.
And the family, were your parents in business at all?
Yeah,
or-
my parents same had their own business, so they ran it. Husband and wife team for 25 odd years, printing and paper, so fine paper merchants and things like that. So so we used to go and work in the family business on school holidays. Packaging up paper and then as we got old enough, and they were worried we weren't going to cut our arms off and things, we were allowed to use the guillotines and that sort of stuff as well too. So
And siblings as well.
yeah, we're both from families of 3, and we're both the eldest. So I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
All in the business, working around. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you think that's where you got your work ethic from your parents?
Well, I'd say so. I mean, certainly, my mum and dad, as I say, both worked in the business. I know my mum worked when it was, I remember when we were in, primary school, early high school, she would work in the business during the day, and then she would go out and do the Morgan Gallup poll, when they used to do the paper ones, and she would drop them off at night and things like that, so that, to get money together to send us off to to good schools and things like that sort of thing. So I think certainly from my side of things, mum and dad worked hard, and were entrepreneurial. Dad tried a few things which maybe didn't work out quite as well. They were more side hustles, but their main business that they had was successful enough, and
I think as well, being involved in sport at a young age, and then obviously doing well, that really relied on a lot of work. So I think
and being disciplined.
And
Big
being
commitment,
disciplined,
absolutely.
and I think having that experience as a young sports person, it relies on hard work. There's no two ways about it.
That's exactly right. You don't get to that level without a lot of commitment.
And always a certain amount of talent, there's no question, but talent only takes you so far, and it's always about the work ethic. Because there's plenty of talented people who don't
make it.
Who don't make it.
And a little bit of luck along the way to keep you not being
100%.
injured. So keep your body right, you do the right things, but and at the right time.
And I think regardless of sport or business, there's certainly luck along the way is helpful.
Yeah. Yep. And so met at university.
Mm-hmm.
PE teachers.
We went in
loved
and
the sport.
both thought we didn't know what we wanted to do, and thought, okay, well, let's sort of explore being a PE teacher, not ever really thinking that we would ever use it.
Did either of you use it?
No.
No.
No, never.
And my story was slightly different to getting there as well, because obviously we're not the same age. I'm a couple of years older than Amber, but so when I finished school, I sort of had through my climbing and my outdoor activities, I was a little bit of a greenie, and so I was, I'll do forestry or something like that. And the careers teacher said, well, why don't you put down agricultural science as a fallback? And that's where I ended up. So I had really no interest in being a farmer. So consequently, I rarely went to university. Failed first year. Thought I'd go back and have another crack. Failed it again.
Good.
So and then a girl who I was at uni with as well too, who was similar, and she said, I think I'm going to go and try PE teaching. I said, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that sort of thing. So I rolled on down and enrolled in the same thing, and there was no romantic sort of, we were just friends from school and that sort of thing. And she said, let's do this. I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So, and my dad said, this is the last one. You're on your own now.
You already failed.
So we ended up in the same year at university. So that's where we met. So.
Yeah.
So who asked who out for the first time? How did that happen? Did you look across the classroom?
Or were they both just drunk at a pub at O Week or something?
No. I think
Saw this
my
6'3"
car was broken down, and I had to hitch a ride.
Was it that way? I thought it was because I lost my license for speeding. Actually. Remember?
What, and you were getting a lift with
I think
me?
I was somehow getting a lift.
We'll
with
just
you
talk
or
amongst
something.
ourselves.
Yeah,
so we can
okay.
get it
I don't
sorted.
know, something along
Getting
those
stories,
lines.
right?
It was complicated at the start.
Yes, it was
so,
complicated
yeah.
at the start.
So Amber still had a boyfriend, so
Oh, that's
Yeah,
all.
right.
we
That's
had
probably
to,
not ideal.
had to sort of work that part out
Just
of it.
make
so
up some story.
yeah,
Yes.
But you're playing netball here while you're studying?
Well, no. Now I've stopped playing at a high level. I was
okay.
still
I think you were still
I was
playing
still
state
playing,
grade,
but I
weren't
wasn't. I wasn't in state teams or anything like that. But yes, I was still playing state grade netball, and so still involved
Yeah.
with netball. And
So study, and then so you finish your degree.
So we
And-
finished our degree and then decided that at that time there was teaching. There was not a lot of demand for teachers. Not as in the same way
Like
that there
now.
is right now.
Right
yeah.
now,
So so to get a job, you would have had to go to a country posting or something like that sort of thing. So
I think as well at that point it was very not trendy, but like a lot of people would do their degree and then they would take their gap year. They would go
Yeah.
overseas.
Yeah.
So I think we decided pretty early on that we didn't really want to be teachers, so why not just
I don't know if
work,
we were
work for 6
absolutely
months.
sure on that, but we thought let's go do some travelling and see what happens when we get back, sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
don't think we were locked into anything, were we? So we did odd jobs. I think I worked as a fencer and a
In Australia
landscaper
or
in
overseas?
Australia.
Yeah.
So this is sort of saving money.
Amber
Yeah,
sold
in-
life
in-
insurance.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
sold life insurance.
She sold a lot of life insurance in a
Yeah.
very short
I was
amount of
very
time.
good at that,
So
as it turns out. Who knew, right?
and then we chuffed off to England and travelled around.
Working holiday.
Yeah,
visa.
working holiday.
Yep.
Travelled
Rite of
around.
passage for the Aussies. Yep.
Fantastic.
Different things. We worked. Actually, the first job we had was a really good one. So we applied for jobs with a company that ran school camps called PGA, and they ran school camps in the UK and in France as well too. And one
They're
of the
big, aren't they?
questions they are, I think,
Yeah.
big now.
Are
And
big.
so they asked what different things you had, and did you speak other languages? I'd done French to VCE or Year 12 at that HSC at that stage, and also I'd done a lot of kayaking, so I was sort of at a national level as a kayaker as well too. And so I said those things, and then it said, are you travelling with anyone? Yes, we both said yes, and they said, would you be separated? And we said no. So they gave us both jobs in the Ardèche region in France as canoeing instructors. Amber had no French and had never been in a canoe before in her life.
No.
So we were in.
And we got there as well. I thought, well, how hard could it be, right? Because
Uh-oh.
they've given me a
French is hard.
job and I've never canoed, and we thought maybe it's just like a really gentle river,
And it was big.
and it was not gentle,
Oh.
and it was
Yeah.
quite, it
Yeah,
was,
there's a
pretty, it was
few
pretty full
grade
on.
2, grade 3 rapid. It was solid,
Yeah.
yeah. And these kids, they were all English kids. They were kids from
Oh.
the UK. So they were, so
Like
everyone
early
spoke.
teens.
Yeah,
they were.
mostly, weren't they?
Some of them were a bit younger, weren't they?
Yeah.
But no, they
Wow.
were early teens.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
you know.
cool.
mostly.
So yeah, interesting kids too. We had kids from Belfast who, and it was still pretty rough
Rough and
times.
ready,
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
rough and ready to go, and but it was great. We were in the south of France, and it was midsummer, so it was light until 10:30 at night, and you'd go back after the day, and you'd all have dinner together, and then you'd go down. There was a big pool, and we'd sit around there, and all the instructors would just drink in long necks of Kronenberg and party and do stuff,
it was
and the
crazy.
teachers had to worry about the kids, and we didn't really have to worry about anything. And then we all lived in a tent city down the end called the Swamp, and it really was kind of like that. So it was
And
pretty
with all the
feral.
instructors from
All over the
all
place.
around the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all
Oh,
around
that
the
would have been
world, so
great.
Yeah,
great
it was.
fun.
It was really
Yeah.
How long
fun.
did you do that for?
About 3 months, I think.
Yeah.
Something. It was a
Ah,
summer
that's-
job,
Yeah.
in there,
Awesome.
and then we travelled through various parts of Europe. So
Working as well, or just
no,
travelling?
then we sort of
No, we did apple picking.
we did some apple
in-
picking at the end, didn't we?
Yep.
Just sort of late autumn in the UK,
Yep.
and then flew over to the States and did a bit of this. Yeah, I think we flew into New York and then went down to Florida and worked our way up on Greyhound buses through to Texas. Amber had done some teaching rounds in Texas.
From here, organised from here?
From Dallas,
Yeah, well, I was doing the degree. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So that was
Yeah.
good.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we went back. So the teacher that Amber had been working with as a student teacher. We went back and stayed with her and her husband, and we still keep in touch with them via Facebook now. We stayed with them for a while and then flew up to Seattle, and my great uncle, who's still alive and lives on Vancouver Island, he's just turned 99, and he came and picked us up. So this was back in 1989, and he came and picked us up and took us back to their place, and then we sorted out our working visas and headed off to Whistler. So yeah, and
That's
spent a year.
so did you ski before then?
Yeah, because you're big skiers, aren't you?
We are
Yeah.
big skiers.
Right.
Yeah, so I did the season in Whistler.
Yeah, 89, 90.
89, 90.
And then stayed on for part of the summer as well too, sort of thing. So
Because it's big, I don't know if it was then, but big downhill cycling during summer as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
yeah, we were just talking about
Mountain
that with
biking,
someone
yeah.
today actually. That the biggest week at Whistler Blackcomb in terms of their revenue is there's a big, and we couldn't think of the name of it this morning either, and it still escapes me. But there's a huge cycling festival. And it's more money goes through the town when that cycling festival is on for one. Crankworks, that's what it's called. Crankworks. When Crankworks is on, more money goes through the city than through the town than even
It's
over
even
Christmas.
Europe. It's amazing. Yeah, like
Yeah.
and one of my mate of mine lives in Andorra, and the same thing. Like it's busier in summer now
Yeah,
than it's a ski resort.
Where's Andorra? What's that?
In between France and Spain.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a little.
I know Hamish, my son. They go down to Red Hill and the little tracks down there, but he shows me that stuff at Whistler. It is
Crazy.
insane.
It is.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're
it's
crazy, and they
incredible.
build like big jumps and stuff like that as well too. And some of the stuff they do is nuts. And then you see these little kids going out. It's a bit like ski school kind of thing. These kids are wheeling their bikes out, and they're about 5 years old, and they've got full body armour on and full face helmets and stuff like this.
It's more dangerous than
So-
skiing.
Oh
It
yeah,
would be.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you hit a tree on skis at
Yeah,
70 or
same
80 k's an
impact.
hour, it's pretty much the
Yeah.
same sort of thing. So
So you were teaching then, or were you just
Skiing.
lifties, or teaching?
Oh.
No,
skis
we-
in
no,
ski?
we actually
I
got
worked
great
in
jobs,
ski
didn't we?
boutique.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
were-
okay,
you
so
were
you
in-
just-
in-
I worked
around.
for the mountain so I'd done a lot of, I'd started working in hospitality as well through uni. So I'd worked in pubs and stuff like that, so pubs and restaurants. And so I got a job working in restaurants on the mountain. So as a mountain employee, I got a season pass, and Amber was my de facto. So she got a season's pass, and the job that Amber had they'd recognised already then accommodation was a huge issue, and it was a company coming out of Banff called
Yep.
Minode Sport, and they were setting up a shop in the new Chateau Lake Louise, the Fairmont, which was just opening.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it was the
Seen
first
photos of
opening,
that.
and they were
Yep.
setting up a high-end boutique. So they said, we better buy a house. So they bought a house. So we got to live in the house, and it had a granny flat down the bottom. So we were the only couple in the house. So we got given that. So it was perfect. So
Amazing.
accommodation with, which was like a 1K walk down the Valley Trail from the city, from the main village. And
Brilliant.
and then we had the lift passes as well. So we kind of had it well set, didn't we really?
So how long did that last for?
We were there until about July of
So you did
1990.
one season.
We
Yeah,
did
we
a
did one
winter.
season.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and then into summer. And I actually, so the company that owned the food and beverage part, or ran the food and beverage part on the mountain, actually offered me a job to stay, and said they would sponsor me for a visa, and go down to Vancouver and work in one of their catering companies in Vancouver in summer, and then run restaurants up on the mountain in winter. But Amber didn't want to stay, so
Time to come home.
Time to come home.
time to come home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we sort of said, so that was when at that stage I decided, I said, well, if we're going to go back, I want to get into restaurants full time sort of thing.
Back here.
Back here. So we had one
The sports teaching now gone for good.
Yeah, the sports teaching had gone for good. So we had one final push there through the summer, wasn't it? So we bought an old Beta Datsun, and for about $600 off a Japanese girl, I think, and drove it from one side of Canada to the other.
Oh, cool.
We did about 20,000 Ks or something like that, I think. Zigzagged up and down through the states and things like that, and ended up over in New Brunswick, where a couple of the people who we'd lived with in the house were actually from. So we spent a few weeks of the summer hanging out with them, and then flew back home. I think flew back home around September, I remember, because it
'Cause you
was
called Barry. And
yeah,
or
'cause I
started work. I think the
I
next
called a
week.
guy who I'd worked with in pubs, because he was very good, restaurateur, manager kind of thing. Highly, had lots of great connections as well. and said, I want to learn how to do this properly. And he said, can you still make coffee? And I said, yeah, good. And he said, okay. He said, we've got 250 people booked in on Sunday for Father's Day. He said, I need you out here. So I went out there, and
Wow.
and that was the start. So, and then we
So
went
that
from there.
you were sort of 25-ish?
Something like
25
that.
or
Yeah,
I think
23?
younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1990s,
Oh, yeah.
83.
Because you had a couple of false starts.
Yeah, I was
so
about
you
25.
left
yeah,
uni when you were
24,
23,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, left uni when I was 40. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're back in Australia and you're working in hospo.
I am.
Yeah,
Amber's
Amber's
taking a different channel.
Where'd
I'm
you go?
taking a different channel. So now I've decided that I want to be a competitive skier. so I think, yes.
Not just any skier though.
Well,
mogul skier.
a mogul skier.
Oh,
So
Oh shit! How the knees?
So yeah.
no, it's actually the lower back that gets you,
Yeah.
not the knees.
Right.
Mogul back.
Yeah, so Matthew did restaurants for a couple of years, and those couple of years I was chasing the snow. So would do seasons. Well, not living at Mount Buller, but spending maybe 3 or 4 days up at Buller, 3 or 4 days depending on how it worked out. Working in Melbourne, and I'd just go back and forth, and then over our summer I would go and train in Europe. So did that for a couple of years.
Yep.
And then.
So did you end up with that? Do you end up being part of a sponsored group, or how do you?
So I guess part of coaching with Team Buller, so that's,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, the main sponsor was my dad.
Yeah.
Love you, Dad.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So how
travel.
far did you get with that?
Look, my goal was to try and make the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
Lillehammer. So it was at a period in time where the summer and winter games used to be in the same year, and then it was at the time when I was skiing, they changed. Did they change it? So there was a window there where you could literally go to 2 Winter Olympics in a 2-year period. So that was kind of my goal, and I do tend to have sometimes quite lofty goals. But I just thought, why the hell not? I'll have
Absolutely.
a crack.
Yeah.
So I didn't make it, but that's not the point. The point for me is for 2 years I gave it a red hot go, and I loved it. And after I had finished that little journey, someone said to me, "Oh, look, are you disappointed that you failed?" And I thought, oh gosh, what an interesting question, because I didn't see it as a failure.
Yeah.
I thought, like always, I think for the both of us that trying is far more important than failing, and failing would have been not to try in the first place.
Yep.
And so I've always had that sort of strong conviction from
Which
a
is
very young age.
Massive in business as well as
Yeah,
sport,
exactly.
isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Got to show up. Got to have a crack.
You got to show up. You got
Goes
to have a
across
crack.
everything. Yep.
And I did well, but yeah, I didn't make the team, and that's
So
okay.
where was Eddie the Eagle? Did you
No,
which
I
one
think
did
he
he
was-
go to?
No,
I
no,
think
actually.
before.
Oh, was
I
it?
think
I've got no idea.
Yeah, so this was like 92.
94. I went to
92.
Lillehammer to try and get a job there.
Oh, did
so,
you?
So
Did you get a job?
No, but
Well,
I
there
was
you go.
backpacking. But I did roll up at Lillehammer to try and get a job working in the ski at that Olympics.
Yeah.
And didn't get a job, so we ended up in Austria doing a season down there.
Yes.
But beautiful place.
Yeah.
Went there
Wow.
before the winter, but it was a great Olympics too. That was
Yes.
watched it.
Yeah. So did I.
Were you,
From
but
the
not there?
sidelines. Not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did you give it up though? Because obviously
Oh,
because
look-
it's 4 more years to.
Yeah, and I was sort of late as well to the party, and of course at that age, like whatever I was, 22, and you kind of want it all now, and you just think, oh, it's not happening fast enough, and then I realised that I had just other things that I wanted to do and other passions and things like that, and I thought, okay, I didn't want to put those sort of things on hold anymore, and I guess that was really getting into business, and at that point, Matthew was working 80 hours a week, and we hardly saw each other because he's in restaurants, and
Yeah.
so
been tough.
I said to him, well, maybe we could just open a restaurant together, and he said, all right.
That's what I say to most things.
Yeah,
that-
all
Yeah.
right.
that Amber says.
And
you.
She says, how about this? And I say, yeah, all right. When are we doing it?
so
She
you're
says,
working-
tomorrow.
So she's already found the site. So you're working for someone else at the moment, not
I
your
was
own
working
business?
for someone else,
Yep.
yeah, and it was out in the on the edge of the Yarra Valley in Kangaroo Ground, so
Right.
it was a long way away. So, I was living back at home in East Bentley. So, and probably after about the 4th or 5th time that I found myself waking up at the lights at the end of the street from home, there where I'd fallen asleep in the car, 200 metres from home sort of thing. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I thought, I need to change this.
Yeah.
So I moved to Surrey Hills. I rented a house with one of our chefs in Surrey Hills. So I was managing the restaurant at this stage, and it was quite a big place. You know, it had bar, bistro, wedding reception centre kind of thing as well too. So we live music, all sorts of stuff. So so I moved to Surrey Hills, and that's how we sort of came to end up living in the eastern suburbs, or the inner eastern suburbs. And so we had discovered Mailing Road, and then there was, I don't even know how you picked that place out. It was a art supply shop that was up for lease, and Amber said that looks like a nice place for a rest. There was no restaurant in there. There was nothing. There was an art supply shop. So that was 93, wasn't it?
Who funded? Yeah, did you have some savings?
We had a little bit of savings, and we got some funding through Amber's dad as well too. So he helped us out with that. So but everybody, we've got photos of my mum and dad, Amber's mum and dad, us all in there ripping
Stripping
stuff out,
paint
stripping the paint, putting
good on
tiles.
Because we had to set it up from
built
scratch.
we built it from
Went
scratch.
to
Build the kitchen.
Put the kitchen in. We went
to
to
the
auctions and bought all the stuff, and we had to get the planning permits through, and there was a couple of vocal residents who were against it. They said it was going to too much more parking and this sort of thing. So, and one was quite
Canterbury, is it? Sorry.
Canterbury.
Yeah. So one was quite a high profile actress, so she would stand there and be very dramatic, and then we went to VCAT, and they gave us our permit, and we didn't destroy the neighbourhood or anything like that as well too. So
What sort of restaurant was it?
it was modern Australian was the sort of the theme at that time. We kind of had in our mind that it would be a fairly simple bistro, with good quality food. It was a dry area still then, so we thought, well, there's a lot of people who live around here.
Really?
Yeah.
So dinner only, was it, or lunch and
No,
dinner?
we would
No,
sell
so
booze.
BYO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
you couldn't sell
lunch
it at all. It was BYO only. So and we thought, well, there's a lot of people around here with really good cellars. They needed more restaurants. There wasn't a lot of restaurants. There was only Manfred's at that stage, I think, in Mailing Road,
Which is like
was,
very upmarket,
very
fine dining.
fine dining. 1 or 2 chef's hats in the Good Food Guide sort of thing. So there was not much else around, in Camberwell or Hawthorn or any of that sort of thing. There wasn't much happening. So, and so we really weren't sure. We put an ad in the paper, and we had a bunch of people apply for the role of the chef.
The chef, I was going to say, who got to choose the menu? And
yeah, so and I had already said to Amber, look, I really want to work in the kitchen when we opened the place, because I'd done a lot of cooking. In the pub that I was in, you had to do everything. The guy I worked for was the kind of guy, you would pour your beer, and then you'd run in and cook their schnitzel on a quiet Tuesday night, and then you'd bring that back out and get their next beer for them as well too. So I'd done quite a bit of cooking, and I still do all the cooking in our house. So so I wanted to work in the kitchen, but I wanted to work with someone because I'd never run a kitchen before. So, and we had a French guy who was a sous chef at Biesse, I think, wasn't it? And came in for the job, and we're like, there's no way we can afford this guy. But all he really wanted to do was, be able to sort of make a name for himself and have freedom to cook interesting food. He'd worked in 3-star Michelin restaurants in France, worked with Japanese chefs and things like that. So he really wanted to, and he'd done a bit of work with Jacques Raymond when Jacques Raymond was just starting to, experiment with different Australian flavours and things like that. So he wanted to do, interesting food and combine his French techniques with, different sort of, with Asian flavours and, even sort of indigenous, ingredients and things like that as well too. So
it was quite amazing that we found ourselves with this incredible chef. And you talk about certain amounts of luck and timing and things like that. And certainly Laurent stayed with us for 5 years. So that's kind of unheard of as well, to have a chef stay for that long. But we had a great.
Stab anyone in the kitchen, or
we threw a few things around.
But we had a great working relationship, and we had huge respect for him. and vice versa. He had huge respect for us and what our vision was.
And we still stay in touch.
And so you're out the front and you're in the kitchen, or is that how you?
That's how it worked.
So I taught Amber how to carry plates.
A bit like the canoeing example, where I had to quickly learn how to canoe.
Yeah.
Same thing. I'd never worked in a restaurant, and we'd sort of had spent so much time, planning it and designing it and doing it and stripping paint and all of that. And we got to kind of, okay, it's launch day, and I thought, holy shit, I need to work out how to carry 3 plates
and make coffee
and do all these things. So it worked out okay. So
just a bit, you must have learnt a shitload about food prep and obviously cooking.
Yeah.
From him during that 5. Were you out the back most of the time with him?
I probably stayed out in the kitchen for a couple of years, year and a half, or something like that. And then, we were pretty busy from the beginning. And then in those days, Stephen Downes was the number one food writer, food critic in Melbourne, or probably maybe in Australia. Some people might debate that, and
but at that
very,
point in time,
very scary. He used to write. It was a full page in the Sunday Age, when the Sunday Age was the big, I don't know what you call that, broadsheet or whatever it is, but it was the big paper, and it was a full page in there, and he could either make you or crucify you, sort of thing. And he came in for dinner, and so
and you knew he was there, though.
Yeah, we knew he was there, and everyone.
We didn't know he was
themselves.
coming, like when. But once he's in there, you know that it's
it's
him.
there. So and then he doesn't give anything away. He rings and interviews. They send out. They take photos, and then so at 2:00 in the morning, then they tell you when it's coming out. At 2:00 in the morning, you go down to the Age
on
in
Saturday night,
in Spencer Street, and stand outside when the first edition comes out, and then you whip it open and look, and we got 3 stars out of 4, and he said we probably would have got another half except for some sweetness in some dish or something like that. So 3 stars out of 4 was like as good as you could possibly ever expect to get, and we were only about a year old.
Oh, right.
And it filled the restaurant for probably 18 months.
Yeah,
we were just booked out.
We were living
So
upstairs,
far in
and we had to
advance.
turn upstairs into a second dining room. So
Good on you.
yeah, so
That's so good. And how long did you have that for?
we had that for about
8
years or something like
8
that.
or 9 years.
Yeah. So
And was that the only thing you were doing during that 8 years? Was there a second?
You had the
restaurant or-
design.
No, and we always sort of dabbled with, okay, what more could we do? What more could we bolt on? Yeah, and I guess thinking about scaling, how could we scale? But
catering and stuff like
yeah,
we thought
but
about
just
catering
never.
and that sort of
And I
thing,
think
so.
at that point we'd started to have children as well, which kind of holds you back, and priorities change. So I guess at that point, we just thought we don't have the capacity to.
It wasn't quite the same as it is now, where now you have an empire of restaurants, really. Like anybody who's going to be successful has to have a stable of restaurants, kind of thing. So in those days, you had a restaurant and you focused on your restaurant, and if you could get some other stuff out of it, like maybe catering or something like that, so we did a little bit of that sort of stuff. But we had 2 kids by the time we sold the restaurant, and that was. We'd worked really, really hard, and we'd bought our own house, and we'd bought another property and renovated it and revalued it, and thought, we're not bad at this, we can add a lot of value. So then we decided we bought a small block of flats. I think we might have done one while we still had the restaurant. Bought a small block of flats in Clayton, wasn't it? So, and we would buy the block, subdivide them, do a little
renovation,
basically cosmetic renovation, new kitchen, new bathroom, all that sort of stuff. Subdivide and create little courtyards and that sort of thing, and then sell them off individually.
So you're doing the design, you're doing the whole process.
Yeah, we're doing everything.
Yep.
With
So
those
you've
sort of
gone
things.
hospitality into property development,
Pretty
just,
much.
Just
and once we did one, and we worked out
we
that
could.
it was and once we did one and worked out that it was a lot easier to make money doing that than it was
food.
for the amount of time we had to spend in the restaurant. We thought
it is. It's a slog. 7 days lunch and dinner.
And the restaurant was under management by that stage, so we were able to actually sell it as a going concern, and then invest that money into the property business, and then we sort of just took off from there, didn't we? So doing those blocks of flats, I think we subdivided and renovated probably about 30 blocks of flats or something like that in Melbourne, down in Geelong. We did a lot of work down in Geelong and that sort of stuff as well too. And then we kind of scaled it back. After the GFC, we got caught up a little bit in a project, and that took us a while to get out of that. And then we sort of scaled back into just doing luxury homes in the inner eastern suburbs, around where we were living. So we're just building beautiful homes and then selling them.
So you're engaging builders to do so you're just finding
pretty much,
designing them and
we would, depending on the size of the project and things like that, So so some things we did as owner builders, and some things we had contracts, the biggest one I think we did was we did a new build of 12 apartments in central Geelong, in Yarra Street. So that was probably the largest sort of thing. We didn't want to. We were entrepreneurial, but we also didn't want to have we had several $1 million in debt. We didn't want to have tens of $1 million in debt. Okay, so the banks loved us at that stage. Of course, that's right. We got
everything.
Tickets to everything.
We'd go to we'd be in the bird cage at the races.
As soon as we stopped
of the
doing
bank.
that, they dropped.
We never got invited after we've.
Now,
been
once you pay your
door.
loans off, they don't care about you.
They
anymore.
don't. They do not care.
And then Canada again. So you're going back to Canada. When was it? Was this not long after this?
So this is now 2016.
Yep.
So we're still in property. I've now branched out into my own design business. So doing design work for other people. So 2016, and India, our daughter, was year 11, I think, at that point.
I guess so.
And she was attending a special school. And I had read a book called The Brain That Changed Itself by Norman Doidge.
Yeah.
And it talked about a school called Eton Arrowsmith that was in Vancouver. And so I'd read the book maybe, 12 months before, and thought, wow, that would be amazing, and that looks really interesting. And then we were at Mount Buller in August of 2016, and I said to Matthew, I've been thinking that we should go to Vancouver and we should take India to this school and just give it a crack.
This is another one of those ones where I said when.
And he said,
next
that sounds great. So the school year starts in September, so I guess that's September of 2017. Yep, we'll get everything organised and we'll go. And I said, no, I think we should go this year.
Now.
It's August now. School starts in September, so that's in 4
2
weeks. So I think I think that we should go now.
We were finishing off at the same time as well too. We were still in the middle of a multi-million-dollar renovation on a huge house in Kew.
And the other kids were at home still?
And the other kids were at home. So Flynn was I think he just started.
Just done year 7.
He was in year 7 at Carey, and the eldest one was in uni. So he was out in uni.
But it was just, I don't know, it was just all of a sudden seemed like the perfect time for us to go. Why wait until next year when we could just go now? Yes, we have to,
The property market was getting a bit iffy. We had no project in the works or anything like that. And the other thing was, so our daughter India is a very good swimmer. So at that time she was on the long list. So the long list for Rio for the Paralympics.
Wow.
So a year out they select a long list and they put everybody. You get kitted out for uniform and things like that before they. So even though you may not make the team, you're in the mix sort of thing. So so she didn't make that team. So we thought same sort of thing. We thought, okay, well it's 4 years if she's might be ready for the next one. There was no guarantees, but it wouldn't hurt if we took off, a year or two or something like that. We spoke to Swimming Australia. They put us in touch with elite swimming coaches in Canada. They said we can hook you up with someone in Vancouver as well, so she can join a swim club there and keep swimming if she wants to. So kind of, a lot of things aligned, didn't they, to do it. So it was, but I said to, I remember one morning, I think we were still up at Mount Buller, and I was sitting in front of the computer buying 2 flights for India, because Amber was, because she was in all the design side of things, she said, well, I'll stay and finish the house. You can take India and go.
And the boys?
And the boys would stay
the boys
here
were with me.
Yeah.
As well too. And so, so I remember sitting in front of the computer at 5:30 in the morning and punching purchase on the 2 tickets to Vancouver and going, holy shit.
One way?
So, no, I think they will return at that stage. At that stage they will return because the plan was that we would go over. Assumed it would all go well, but I would come back around Christmas when the school year broke for Christmas. We would pack everything up, and put it into storage, and then Amber and I and our youngest would fly back, and our eldest was he stayed here because he was at uni and he wanted there was a course he wanted to do.
And so was she? Did you get her enrolled pretty easily into that school?
Yeah, we were able to get her in, and
a lot of Aussies go there. Yeah, a lot of Aussie families go there. So because there was not the same school here. There is one here now, so I don't know whether the same number of people go, but great network of people. We still keep in touch with them. You know, we see them, you know, maybe once a year or something like that. So.
And did you both work over there when you're in Canada, or did you get?
No, and so this is where the Nurse Next Door story starts, because we didn't have a work visa, so we couldn't work.
We looked into it.
So
I mean, we did
looked
look into it, but it was so convoluted, and the taxation issues were, you know, were so it wasn't worth the effort for the amount of time that we had and the amount of money that we would have to invest just to get the work visa, and we didn't really need to work. So that was the main thing. So we thought it was a nice time to have a bit of a break.
Yeah, so it was an incredible freedom to have sold everything. So literally we'd sold everything when we left Australia, sold the car, sold the house, and everything was in storage, and we didn't have to work. And so there was this...
And we had no debt.
We had no debt. So it's just like, oh, okay, what do we want to do next? So, you know, like we'd been on this sort of treadmill of businesses, and we loved our businesses, and it was all great, but it's just all of a sudden when you're off that treadmill and just go, okay, well, we've got this freedom to just choose. We don't have to go back to Australia, or when we go back to Australia, do the same thing. We could do anything.
But we did look at businesses that were sort of complementary to building, you know, because one of the things with property development obviously is the lumpy cash flow. So you get a big influx of cash, and then you have just cash going out for a few years, and then the next thing, you know. So unless you've got multiple projects rolling over the top of each other, you know, the cash flow is very lumpy. So we thought maybe we could get something that's complementary. So like it might be cabinet making or something like that. So I'm on the internet and on the phone with people saying I'm really interested in buying your business, but I'm in
back
Vancouver,
in Australia,
and they're going, yeah, right. So, and I said, no, I'll fly back if it works out, I'll fly back. But it was hard to get people to take us too seriously, sort of thing. So then we started thinking about a few other things, didn't we? So
yeah, well, it's quite a big shift though. Like, so who first saw it, and how did you find Nurse Next Door Canada?
So, I guess a year after we'd been living there, and we were starting to get a bit more serious about, okay, well, we're going to be heading home in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, and so we need to start figuring out what the hell we're going to do.
Amber told me when I was going home.
Yeah.
She said, you're going home on the 1st of April because you need to get a house and a job and a car and all that sort of stuff, so when we come back at the end of the school year. So she had me, it was actually great. I used Qantas Frequent Flyer, and I got myself seat 1A on the Qantas flight home on points. So I was actually quite looking forward to flying home first class, you know. So, you know, but I'm glad I stayed anyway.
As luck would have it, and again, here's the luck again. As luck would have it, we did see one of the pink Nurse Next Door cars driving around our local neighbourhood in Vancouver, and it's interesting because
they'd been around, hadn't they?
Because we talk about the RAS, right? You know, the reticular activating system. You know that there's so much out there, and your brain will only sort of pay attention to things that matter. And so obviously the Nurse Next Door cars had been driving around Vancouver the whole time that we'd been there, but it wasn't until about a year later that we actually went, oh, there they are. That looks interesting. Let's look them up. So it literally was that. We noticed it.
Said Home Care Services, and we thought, and aged care. Amber had an idea probably even before we went to Vancouver. At one stage, we had thought about the aging the aging population and things like that. And I think Amber's idea was nannies for grannies.
Nannies for grannies.
Or something like that sort of thing. So it was sort of in the back of our mind that kind of business might be something that we could do. Yeah. And, you know, so we thought, well, let's have a bit of a look at this company, Nurse Next Door, and see what they do. We always like to say we were doing a bit of R&D, rip off and duplicate. So, which comes from one of the Nurse Next Door co-founders actually. So, and John DeHart used to say that. So,
and what were they at that stage? What did the business look like?
Well, we didn't really. All we knew was that they were a home care business. We didn't know much about them. So when we started to research them, we found out they were a home care business that focused largely on senior care. So, you know, aged care in the home. They'd been founded in Vancouver, which we didn't know at that time, and then their head office was literally 10 minutes down the road from where we lived. So,
And at this stage, we don't even know that they're a franchise. You know, we just know that they just do home care.
Yeah. So then we find out they're a franchise, which the only franchise stories we know are all the shit ones that go on the front page of the paper about all the people who lose their houses and stuff like that. So we're like, oh, franchising. But they were interested in expanding internationally. So at this stage, they'd been franchising in Canada for about 15 years, and they'd been in the States maybe for about 5 or something like that. Canada was pretty much sold out, apart from Quebec, where they didn't go because Quebec's like a different country, even though it's part of Canada. But they were they'd expanded into the States as well. So they'd identified, Australia and the UK as key areas that they wanted to expand into. So I filled out one of their forms, a franchise application form. It said, "What are you interested in?" I said, "Australia." The phone rang about 2 minutes after I submitted the form. The guy goes, "You're interested in Australia?" He said, "What part of Australia are you interested in?" I said, "All of it." So he said, "I'll get someone else to give you a call." So that was how we started our conversation with them, wasn't it? And then, we spent probably a year. One of the first calls we made was to Janine Ellis. We knew Janine from down the coast. Our kids had done nippers together, and we'd be we would catch up with her and Jeff as part of a group of people that we knew down that way over summer and barbecue together and stuff. So we said, we're thinking about this. What do we need to know? So Janine was great.
Crash course in franchising.
Franchising. She said, do this, don't do this, don't let them tell you to do this. This is.
How did it? Now you're a couple of years in. How did remember what she said, and how's it played out for you guys?
Well, I think the main thing was she said, don't be too aggressive. Don't let them give you too aggressive a rollout. So
okay.
So we, the main thing was she said they'll want to expand really fast. Don't let it be too aggressive, because otherwise you're gonna find yourself just selling to anybody to get the numbers and meet your key deadlines and things like that. So that was probably
what else. But I mean, all of it was just like spot on in terms of what we needed to hear at that point. And I think the other really lovely thing that she said, "Gee, they're really lucky to have you guys," because she'd sort of seen, I guess, what we had done with our other businesses, and that we still had a lot of value. So So
that's right. And I guess the thing, you've obviously got lots of different experience, which we've talked about today, but you also had time, which was to really learn about the business and understand it.
Oh, yeah,
a lot of people
because
a lot of people, whether they're franchisees or master franchisees, are running their own. They're either working or running their own business, and so that allowed you to really understand the market, because you're in a whole new sector now. So
Well, we spent about a year going back and forth with them. Just making sure that we were comfortable with the contracts and things like that. To have some degree of flexibility when we came back to Australia, because obviously the model was going to be slightly different because there was the NDIS here as well too. So we knew that would be part of our business. We never realised how much of a part it would be.
I think the other thing as well is, initially with the contract, they wanted us to start franchising after 6 months. And we said, no, we're new to franchising, new to the sector. We want a full year to run our corporately owned franchise, to fully understand everything before we actually go out and start. Yeah, because, we feel a huge sense of responsibility to every single franchise partner that we, bring on. And we want to say with confidence that we know what we're doing, because we've done it. Like we've run a franchise
how did that
ourselves.
Go?
Nice. I mean, great. We've learned a lot. I mean, we still learn stuff every day. I say to my team all the time, or even new franchise partners coming in, I still learn stuff now, and I'm 5 years in. So don't be hard on yourself if you think, I don't know it after a month. It's just like it's a continual learning process.
So just taking a couple of steps back. So how big was it in Canada and the States at that time?
Probably had about 150 units, I think, something like that, at that stage already. So, they had about 75 or 80 in Canada. So, and that, as I say, excluding Quebec. And they didn't have a huge presence over on the east, the far east side of things. They do have some people over there, but mostly it's probably centred around Western Canada and Ontario, the majority of their locations.
What are they now? What would they be now?
Still sort of the same in Canada, basically, but they're probably doubled in the US, so they're expanding pretty fast in the US now as well too. They signed a big deal maybe 7 or 8 years ago with a hospital business in California who took on effectively 40 franchises. So they tried to actually buy Nurse Next Door, and John and Ken said it's not for sale. So effectively, but it was like a $6 billion company in California, and so they signed up for 40 franchises or something like that. So I think they've backed out of that now, and it's changed around it because they decided it wasn't quite the right model. But yeah, they've probably doubled in size in the United States over the last 5 years while we've been going. So.
And your franchising journey, so you've spent a year and understand the industry and how all that worked, and then started bringing franchisees on. So how did that go? Like the process of interviewing them, and
Yeah, well, the first one was organic, so we hadn't actually started actively advertising. And Glenn and Lauren on the Gold Coast. So Glenn had seen an editorial in one of the magazines, one of the franchising magazines, about Nurse Next Door expanding, and they were actually trying to buy a Home Instead franchise up in Queensland. And then Home Instead sold it to an existing franchise partner of the area that they were in. So all Glenn could remember was that he'd seen something in a magazine. He couldn't remember the name, but there was a couple standing in front of a pink car. So he Googled pink car home care, and it came up with Nurse Next Door. So he rang Vancouver directly. They put him in touch with me, and then we started that journey. So with them, and that was probably sort of September-ish. Of 2019, and then they signed their franchise agreement in early 2020. Lauren came down to do the training. So we do a 12-week program. The majority of it's online, but about halfway through, franchise partners will come down to Melbourne and spend a week. So we call it Immersion Week, and so they come and they work in our Melbourne business, so they can see what it's like to actually operate a business, sit in on meetings and things like that. So Lauren came down in March 2020. We put her in a taxi back to the airport, and she flew out, and Dan Andrews shut the borders. And then we didn't see another franchise partner face-to-face until a year later. So,
but how many you recruit in that time?
Still quite
about
a few.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
So
mostly Queensland.
Queenslanders.
What's your atypical franchisee look like? I mean, have they got a background in?
It's such a diverse group now, isn't it? In most cases, they have either a lived experience or direct experience with caring for others, so obviously nurses.
Yep.
But for our non-clinical franchise partners, they have a lived experience of what it's like to care for a loved one, and keep them in their own home. So...
there's not. I mean, probably at the moment we're probably finding more nurses coming on board. Well, we've got one GP up in Central Coast in New South Wales, so it's just opened a business. So she wants to be more community minded.
We're now about 50-50. 50% are clinical and 50% aren't. But
and 42 you said earlier, so
42 franchise partners either operating or launching.
Yep.
Okay. Some of those have multi-unit holders.
So it's over
mostly
50.
mostly the earlier ones. They sort of, because they got in first and they were taking a chance on us a bit, we gave them an opportunity to take on a second territory. We're much stricter around that now. So because often, you've got two types of people who take multi-unit in this sort of sense, because it's not like a storefront. So it's just an expanded territory. So there's two types of people who are doing it. There's the person who actually wants to grow a really big business, and there's the other person who wants to sort of protect their area.
Offense
and not
versus
let everybody
defense.
else. Yeah, so they want a more defensive thing. So, so look, we've learnt a lot around that space, and so now, when people say, look, I want to buy another territory, we say, let's have a look at what you're doing in your own territory at the moment. What's your penetration like into the potential business of what you're doing there? And there's a lot more hoops, to jump through as well.
So it's a bloody hard business. I mean, I know you're dealing with loved ones. There's a lot of, you got to get it right, haven't you? Or else you...
In 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24/7, and I mean, that's right.
Yeah,
Amber
and
deals
that's
with all the challenging ones. I'm not
3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm not allowed to speak to them because I can sometimes go get a little bit over the.
But you're right. No,
I lose it sometimes. So
yeah.
But you're right. No, it is a difficult business, and that is why in your heart, you truly have to want to make lives better, which is our purpose. And you have to be passionate about wanting to make a difference, because if you're just entering into this sector for the money and the business opportunity, and without question there's a huge business opportunity in this sector. It's ageing population, NDIS, billions of dollars of government funding. But if you're coming to us and are just coming to us, to be involved with Nurse Next Door for the money and the business opportunity, we say there's easier ways to make money. And there is. It's hard, but when you're passionate about it, then it drives you and it gets you out of bed in the morning, and it helps you to see the person rather than the challenge of caring for that vulnerable person.
We talk a lot about the why, one of the things is Simon Sinek's Golden Circle and the why. Why do we do what we do over and above making money, which is just a result sort of thing. So, so one of the first questions that we always ask people is why home care, why Nurse Next Door, why now sort of thing. And if the answer is, my accountant told me it would be a good investment, then that's the end of the conversation sort of thing. So we know pretty quickly. I mean, obviously I don't do it as directly now as we did, as I did for the first 3 years or so. But you can tell pretty quickly whether somebody really gets it, and we often have, when we do this immersions week, we do these things called Pecha Kucha, which is a little 30-second, it's like 10 slides, 30 seconds each. Tell me about yourself, outside of what we know. So it's very personalised. And we know when we start these with our franchise partners, they do them at the end. We all do ours at the start of the week and they do theirs at the end of the week. And we always have to make sure there's a box of tissues on the table, because they're so passionate about what they're doing, they're all in tears halfway through it sort of thing. So, and that's, nice. That why the why that's in them, this whole idea of wanting to make a difference in people's lives and making lives better, that's what gets you through the shit days, when you've been abused by someone's husband, wife, mother, father, daughter, son, or whatever the night before, and they've called you every effing name under the sun, and things like that. And Amber takes those calls, and and she just bats them away, and as she said, they just want to be. Well, I listen to them. The abusive stuff. You don't. She doesn't let them get to it.
No, and I say to my team as well. You just have to put your armour on, right? Because this is not personal, right? They don't know me. They don't. Yeah. So if they're sort of lashing out, they're struggling, and it doesn't make it right. But at the same time, I know I'm going to have these challenging conversations, or people that are angry or abusive. But mostly they just want to be heard. They want to feel validated that the way that they're feeling, and that's the role that that I play in handling.
It's all high emotion stuff.
Yeah.
When
it is.
Someone needs care at home, it's confronting, as you said,
absolutely.
and it's high emotion for the family around them. Yeah, that's for sure.
And the thing is as well, you can look at the elderly population, but then with our work that we do with the NDIS, we're dealing with somebody who's fallen off a ladder and is now a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, man, that's heavy stuff, and for everybody. And so you can understand, as you say, it's high emotion. It's this is not what we signed up for in life. Yeah. And as providers, we're just trying to do everything that we can. Like, we cannot change what's happened to you. All we can do is go in there and try and do what we can do to
and sometimes
help.
We'll have some of our team, they'll come and they'll say to Amber, this is too hard, this client's too hard, we have to let them go. And Amber will sit with them and say, but, that's right, are we making a difference? Like, I know it's hard, and I know they seem like they don't care or they don't want it, but, if we're making that sort of 1% difference, then let's keep trying to go back, within reason. Obviously, we have to provide a safe workplace.
Yes.
But at the same time, if we can make a difference, that's the key.
Yeah, because if a company like ours can't do it, well, who's going to do it? This person is just left,
So I'm going to ask for tips in a sec, because I'm going to need to fill in soon. But just in terms, I know your franchise partners, you've surveyed them. So how are they going at the moment? Is getting some data around things that you can improve the business, like where the challenging areas.
Well, we actually just had a call this morning. At 7 o'clock this morning was taking a look at some of the results, the initial stuff. So now we've got to sort of sit down and take that away and and see
Is it what you thought?
Pretty much, I think so. It was very positive. So I think most people are really engaged and feel there's a great culture and good leadership and things like that, and so, so there's obviously there's always some opportunities where you can improve, but as they say, they're not usually huge surprises to you where people might say, look, that's right, could I get a bit more support here or that sort of thing. So.
But it's just a great thing to do, like learn to, you got to listen to your franchise partners and you're,
absolutely, because we
them
say to them, I mean, we just had our inaugural conference a couple of months ago, and really we are all in this together. Like we can't exist without you guys, and you can't exist without us. So it's so important to be collaborative.
Some of them may have a contrary view to that, that they can't exist without us.
Well, I mean, in this,
but that's part of the life cycle of a franchise partner, isn't it?
So, but there's strength in unity. And so it's how united can we be?
And you guys are building the brand. You're doing a great job in building the brand, and that's helping them in their business and stuff like that. And you're building the systems and the processes. That, you get some help from Canada, but you're doing your own thing here, so which is great as well. But now we need to finish up here. But if put your Janine Ellis hat back on for yourselves now, as now you've been 5 years along this journey as franchisors for the Australian market. So what sort of tips would you have for other people embarking on the franchising journey?
Well, you had the first one before.
Oh, well, I said buckle up, baby.
Yeah.
Look, we can only talk about our experience, and we have grown exponentially, okay? And so there's challenges to that. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's been a huge amount of work, which is fine. I mean, I didn't expect anything different. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're embarking on this sort of journey, it's just be prepared to give it everything that you've got. We talk about this a lot. Like this is our moment. This is our opportunity. I always say we don't ever take anything for granted, just because we've had an incredible 5 years and grown the way in which we have and met like our 10-year goals at year 5. It's been amazing, but we don't rest. We just always get up every day and go, okay, we can't take this for granted. We just have to, keep making.
I have to rest a little bit more because I'm a few years older than
he wants to rest.
Let's get back into the surfing, mate.
Yeah. But look, certainly we love franchising. There's it's such a great way to build a business, and it's really interesting because our background has not been in franchising at all, but I think there's just so many franchise businesses obviously in Australia, and they provide so much to our GDP. And
I think as a franchisor, what you've got to do is build a really good team and surround yourself with great people, and I think what we've found, with advice from good advisors, and I remember speaking with John about, that's right, we were talking about expanding our finance team and where we were in our journey, and John said, I think you need a CFO now. Not so much for right now, but because you're going to be there before you need it, sort of thing. So that was, good advice to us, and, we're very grateful to have that sort of advice along the way. So, surround yourself. It's the same as any sort of business. Surround yourself with great people who can do things so that you don't have to, do everything, because that's right. Because, I mean, when in our other businesses, we did everything. Obviously, we weren't on the tools, but we did everything. So, so that's been something that we've had to learn to do, to let go a bit, and let people run with things and make some mistakes and that sort of stuff. So invest in people, invest sooner than you think you would. So you do need to be well capitalised. Make sure, because you may not get the stellar run that we just happen to have had, and look, and I think the other thing as well too is get involved in franchising.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like you're
joining
really.
Our committee.
I'm joining your committee. I just got my letter today, so I've just joined the
Congratulations.
The induction is that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to. So get involved. The franchising community is amazing. I think everybody would attest to this.
You had a trip to Canberra recently with the FCA?
Yeah, I had a trip to Canberra, which was great, to go and speak to the small business ministers and shadow ministers and treasury and things like that to represent sort of the healthcare sector of franchising. But get involved. It's the best way to do it, and because franchising, everybody shares, and it doesn't matter what sector you're in. That's one of the great things I think we've found, is that people share experiences and they work together as franchisors, to support each other really, really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being part of our podcast.
Well
Great
done.
journey. Congratulations on
problem.
the 5 years to date.
Thanks for
Right.
having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love the picture.